21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
There's a lot of scams in equipment financing, and if you're not careful of them, they can cost you and your business thousands of dollars. Hi, my name is Rob Misheloff, and I founded Smarter Finance USA after having spent a number of years running a direct marketing company. And I started direct marketing doing mailers for equipment financing companies to try to get customers. And through that process, one of the things I found was they weren't always honest with their customers. In fact, a lot of them were proud of the way that they, as they put it, pull the wool over the eyes of their customers, because somebody who drives a truck or somebody that pours concrete driveways is very good at their trade, but they are not necessarily knowledgeable about financing, particularly the private financing markets. And so in their words, you could tell them everything. And as a marketer, I didn't want to help other people steal from small business owners. And so I started Smarter Finance USA to help business owners make informed business decisions when they wanted to finance equipment for their business. And that oftentimes means sometimes the rates or the payments that a business owner gets aren't necessarily what they expect, and they aren't necessarily what they would like. However, lying to the person about that leads to a bad situation for everybody involved. We're not always going to be the best choice for somebody that wants to finance equipment. In fact, there's three main choices. And the first and foremost, if you've got somewhat decent credit and you're buying new equipment, many dealers will have an in-house financing program. And in fact, that's gonna have rates that nobody else can compete with. And oftentimes they're teaser rates, but maybe they're 0% financing, or maybe they're 5% financing, but it's better than you can get anywhere in the market. In fact, sometimes we get people calling that got a dealer rate and they want to price check it, and we do the math and we go, well, this is free financing. That you can't do any better than free financing. So that's what you need to do. The second option is usually going to be a bank, right? A bank is going to have lower rates and lower payments and easier terms than any private credit market. The issue is the vast majority of small businesses can't get approved for equipment financing at a bank. In fact, several years ago, I proved that to myself, that there was an actual reason for my company to exist, because we were moving to a larger office and we needed new furniture. And we were purchasing about $100,000 worth of furniture. So I went to my own bank, and I've been in business at that point. I think we'd been in business for 5 or 6 years. Myself and my business partner had excellent credit. We had enough money in the bank to pay cash for the furniture. We just didn't want to. Very few business owners are going to make a large purchase in cash. And the bank said, no, that's not something we're going to do for you. And so in about an hour, we were able to line up financing with one of the investor sources that we use for our own customers. And so if you don't get approved by the bank or for the in-house financing program, that's when you're going to look at what's called an equipment financing company, like ours. Talking about my company versus other companies on the market, The real key difference between us and some of the companies on the market, aside from transparency, is we're a broker with numerous different financing sources, and that, depending on what your needs are, that could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. And I'll explain that a little bit. There are some direct lenders in the market. And when I say direct lender, it means they're using their own funds and they're going to have a very narrow credit window, and meaning you have to have good credit. You can't be a startup. You have to be purchasing new equipment, and we're going to compete in a lot of cases poorly against those direct lenders. So, for example, we do poorly usually in the medical equipment market for doctors with perfect credit. That's We're not going to be a good fit. Like, we could do that transaction, but we're going to get you a worse rate um, than those specific niche markets. Now, if you're looking at used equipment or startup businesses or challenged credit, those sorts of things, that's where we're going to be a very effective use of somebody's time. And the reason for that is because we have an A through D portfolio, meaning we can do the very best credit, we can find a solution for the worst credit, and there's not really a specific type of equipment we can't do. And because of that, if you're anything outside of the established business with good credit buying new equipment, we're going to be a good choice. But just we do very little of newer equipment for good credit people, not because we can't, but because um, we're just not competitive in that market. Ideally, in a perfect world, um, one of the ways you can avoid getting into a bad contract is to have your attorney look at anything before you sign it. What we find, though, is many small businesses, they don't have access to attorneys. Either they don't know one, or they don't have the funds, and it's very rare for one of our customers to say, I'm going to have my attorney look at it. Whereas in contrast, a larger company, like, I don't sign anything without having my attorney look over it. So if you can't do that, one thing that's very important is to look up that company's reviews online. And specifically, here's what to look for. Because if the person's complaining, well, that company had high rates, well, maybe they did, or maybe that was a very high risk situation. Um, it will sometimes, every company has some bad reviews if they've been around for a while. And for instance, if it's they couldn't get me approved again, well, that's not necessarily the company's fault, and maybe you just weren't a fit for their programs. What you really want to do is you want to look at the bad reviews and look at the tone of the reviews and look for signs that the company might have ripped somebody off. And the signs of that, one of the biggest tells is there's a scam in the marketplace of fake approvals. And what a fake approval is, a company will run your credit and they'll send out an approval letter, and they'll say, okay, in order to get this transaction done, we're going to need a first payment, a last payment, and a security deposit, which incidentally is industry standard. There's nothing wrong with that. However, then the company comes back and says, well, we weren't able to get you the terms that we promised. However, here are these not as good terms. And by the way, on page 2, in very tiny print, it says, if you don't move forward, we've earned this deposit. And in fact, this happens every day in the industry. And It's such a small amount, right? Typically, it's $2,000 or $3,000. So there's nothing you can do. You're not going to go get an attorney to try to recover that small amount of money. However, for like someone, if you're just starting your business, that amount of money can put you where you're no longer in the running to be successful for your company. A lot of folks are starting a business with not that much money and putting everything they have into trying to get the equipment they need for the business, especially in like, for instance, in the trucking and construction trades. A lot of times the equipment literally is the business. And in those cases, a scam like that could literally put you out of business. It's harming you, it's potentially harming your family. And so and a company can't get away for very long with pulling these kind of tricks without somebody screaming about it online. And so that's what you really want to look for in the reviews of the company. And that's the easiest way to avoid one of these tricks putting you in a bad predicament. We're not out here trying to conquer the world. We're just trying to help small business owners uh, finance to build their business and reach their dreams. And that can mean a lot of different things. Most of our customers are very, very small businesses. And when I say very small, I mean 1 to 4 employees is the vast majority of our customer base. And helping somebody uh, to realize that dream, and I'll give you an example of a very common situation we see is someone will call us up and they'll say, well, I'm working for somebody now and I'm making 50 or $60,000 a year and I'm driving a dump truck and I have an opportunity to get a contract. And if I get my own dump truck, I can make a lot more money. And then we'll ask them, well, what does that look like? What does a lot more money mean? And they'll say, well, if I'm running that truck, it's going to pay me about $100 an hour. So you say, okay, and how many hours a week are you going to be driving that truck? And they say, well, it's going to be about 50 hours a week. So that's $5,000 a week, which translates to about $20,000 a month. And their costs are going to be, insurance is going to be $1,500 or so. Fuel is going to be $4,000, which leaves them about $14,500. And then they're going to make the payment on the truck. And depending on the rate and what it costs, maybe that payment's going to be $2,000. And then there's other expenses involved in running the business and in putting a set aside for repairs. So maybe they're left over with, after all the expenses are counted, $10,000. Well, that's going to double that person's income and give them the opportunity to, a lot of times, we'll have someone buy their first truck, and then a couple of years later, they'll call us up and they're going to buy their second truck. And this time they're going to put a driver into it. And so, and we've had experiences where people have come back to us 9, 10, 11, or 12 times as they've grown their business and grown from, a one truck company or a very small construction company to an 8 or 10 truck company, which now it's not a job, it's a real business. And that's pretty cool to see. There's a lot of resources for business owners looking into financing and especially specific industries and different things to look out for on our website. We have a podcast with I don't know 50 episodes about different finance topics. We've got an equipment finance calculator got a blog with hundreds of articles about all sorts of different equipment financing verticals, whether it's medical or construction or food trucks and so on and so forth, and the different things that drive those industries when it comes to financing. So we hope that it is a good resource and that you can learn a lot of what you need just from looking at our website.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.